Unofficial welcome and good morning, everyone. My name is David Corey, and I am with the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, and we're here to talk about emotional intelligence and leader performance. This particular session is all about the concept of authenticity. Authenticity is an important topic. It's a current topic. It's a contemporary topic. And I think that it's always been a contemporary, it's always been an important topic. And what we know is that that we are drawn to authentic leaders. We want to be around authenticity. There's something honest. There's something real. There's something trustworthy about authenticity. And so it's important, and we want to take a look at it. And I am by no means an expert or an authority on authenticity. However, we do use a leadership model in our emotional intelligence develop programs, which includes authenticity. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the correlations between some of our emotional intelligence skills and competencies and authenticity. So let's begin. We're going to start by actually asking you a little bit about who's here. So in terms of who is here, and I decided to try this little bit of a fancier way to control my screen here this morning, but of course it does, like all things technology, there may in fact sometimes be a bit of a learning curve. All right, so we've got a poll for you, and we're going to just use the polling question, which is why are you here? So let's ask that question first. Why are you here? And to find out why you're here, we're going to launch this little poll. And so up on your screen, you should see a question, which is the first answer is I want to develop my own authenticity. The second question is I want to use the information to help others develop their authenticity. Then there's both of the above. And there's one last one which may apply for some of you, which is I was just curious. What is this all about? What is authenticity? What's emotional intelligence? What do the two have to do with each other? And so we're just going to ask you to complete that at this time, and we'll give you the answers immediately, which is kind of the fun part of polls, is that we do get to find out immediately. Okay. So it looks like we've got almost everyone completing the poll there. So we've got, in terms of I want to develop my own authenticity, we've got 16% of the group. We've got I want to use the info to help others develop their authenticity, 7%. Both of the above, that's 60%. And then finally, I was just curious, about 17% of you are just curious, which is absolutely fine. So that gives me some information to go on, and we will end the poll and carry on with our presentation. And in terms of, oh, here's a button, share results. So I can just share those with you quickly. So you should be able to see the results now. Again, 15% I want to develop my own, 7% help others, 61% both, and 17% curious. Okay, so let's carry on and look at our next slide here. All right, so in terms of a bit of an agenda for you this morning, what is authenticity? Why does it matter? What are some competencies from our EQ model that we use? And I'll review that with you that correlate with authenticity. Then we'll take some questions and we'll try to summarize for you and let you get on with your day. So here's a wonderful group of leaders that I worked with in at an R&D center for an international company. Great group and a lot of fun. Carrying right on. What about authenticity? Well, in 1888, Henry David Thoreau wrote in his book Winter, "We are constantly invited to be who we are." and this is an interesting aspect of authenticity, is who are you really? And of course, Carl Jung wrote about what he talked about as our less conscious persona and our more conscious persona. The less conscious persona being who we really are, and the more conscious persona, who we choose to show up as. So that was Thoreau in 1888 talking about this idea that we are constantly invited to be who we are, constantly invited to share who we genuinely, honestly are. And then much later in 2010, in her wonderful book, The Gifts of Imperfection, Brene Brown writes, authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. And again, this idea that we have a genuine or an honest or an authentic persona, and then we have this person that we choose to show up as, who we think we're supposed to be, who we try to be, and maybe that authentic self is who we are when we stop trying and we just are. We just show up as who we honestly are. So this is an interesting question, and of course we want to try to think about how we can develop in these areas, and that's really why I'm here. What our organization does, what the Emotional Intelligence Training Company does, is try to help people to improve. And if we're going to do that, then what is a way that we can do that and help others? Well, one way is through using the model I'm going to review with you momentarily. Now, here's another take on authenticity, and I was wrestling with the question for myself, and I decided that I wanted to work it out, and that was, what if who you authentically are is not a good person? Then what? And so what I did was I wrote a blog post. Turned out to be a very popular blog post, and it's called The Authenticity Conundrum. You can find it on our blog. And Sherwin did this wonderful image. Sherwin Arnott is our webmaster, graphic designer, media person extraordinaire, and he created this great image. This person who has this shadow side, my question really was, does authenticity mean that you're a good person in terms of leadership and what we're talking about here today? And ultimately the answer turns out to be yes. It's not being an authentic bad person, it's being authentically a good person, and we'll talk about why that matters and why that's important a little bit later on. Now, some of you are familiar with the model of leadership that we use, and some of you may not be, but this model here is the model that is critical and important in the work that we do. So what we've got here is we've got this four-dimensional model of transformational leadership created by MHS Assessments, and what they did was they did a study which looked at a group of high-performing leaders' EQ. So they gave them all the EQI, and we'll look at the EQI model momentarily and review that for you, just in case you're not familiar with it. And they gave the same group of people an assessment which measures their competency in these four dimensions. And then they correlated those, and they found that and they listed the top 6 correlations between the EQI model, that is EQ skills, and these four dimensions of leadership. Now, this model lends itself to exploring each dimension at a time, and we're going to do that. And we have a much more in-depth course that we offer that does explore these four dimensions at a deeper level. But today's about authenticity. And you see the definition here of an authentic leader is someone who serves as a role model for moral and fair behavior. A transparent approach commands esteem and confidence from employees. So here, there's some key ideas here. One is a role model. We want to be like them. Another is morality, doing the right thing. What is the right thing? Fair, being fair, treating people fairly. And then there's this idea of transparency. which we all know and appreciate when it's extended to us, when people actually show don't play their cards close to their chest, but rather share things out in the open, and we can trust that. There's this trust and confidence that comes from having a relationship that is characterized by transparency. So we're going to take a look at this in a little bit more depth. Now, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with our model of EQ competencies, here's the model. Again, this model was originally created by Dr. Reuven Bar-On. It was worked on over the years by MHS Assessments and their wonderful research team there. And it's got this concept of emotional intelligence at the center. And emotional intelligence is an acknowledgement that our brains process emotions as well as all the wonderful things that our brains do. And then there are many associated skills and competencies that fit with that. Obviously, emotional intelligence is part nature and part nurture. That is, part of what we have is genetically predetermined and part is learned. And we focus in on what is learned because that's how we feel we can help people the most, is by focusing on what they've learned and how they can learn to do it better. And so you can see the 15 competencies that radiate outward. They're in 5 general categories. And then the concepts in the outer ring are outcomes. So having a sense of personal and professional well-being is an outcome of having adequate skills in the 15 competencies. Now, when you go online and you take the EQI, you respond to a series of statements and you get a printout a little bit like this. This is just one page, one of many pages which detail how your level of functioning is affecting you, and suggestions for how you might leverage your strengths and how you may address various lower scoring areas, and that could be very helpful for you. And we find that for our clients, it is a very helpful way to go about looking at their own EQ and to do some self-awareness development. Okay, so we are going to just check and make sure that everything is going the way it's supposed to be going here. And okay, everything seems good. We'll continue on with our, oh, I have another polling question for you, actually. So so now that you've seen the competencies, and some of you are very familiar with the competencies and some of you are less familiar with them, but we'll just try this little polling question in any case. That's it's kind of fun, and we're going to ask you, of these 6 competencies, which are the top 6, they're actually correlated in order of importance. And so which do you think are the top 3 competencies that relate with this concept of authenticity? And then we'll go into talking about, looking at the research and talking about why that might be. So, okay, so people are registering their votes now, and we see that that emotional self-awareness is right up there. And then we've got self-actualization, self-regard. All right, it's great to see people responding to the poll, and then I will share with you the results of the poll, and we'll talk a little bit, and then we'll look at the actual research answers. Okay, so all right. Let's, we've got very close to everyone, 100% responding, very close, and we're in the 90s now. Give you another second or so to complete the poll, and we'll take a look at the results. Okay, let's take a look at those results. Share the results with you. You should see the results up on your screen. We've got emotional self-awareness seems to be the winner. It's got the most votes. as the number one thing that is important in authenticity, that is knowing and understanding and having a connection with your own emotions. That seems to be, at least according to this group, one of the most important things. And then following emotional self-awareness is self-regard. So that's interesting. So how does one regard oneself, and how might that be critical and important to authenticity and to effective leadership? And then the third looks like self-actualization. So that's very interesting. And then following that is social responsibility, the ability to give to others. And then we've got independence at 16% and reality testing at 9%. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to actually go to the model. And here you see the model, and this is our redrawing of the model. We kind of took the model and put it into a wheel model. And there you see the 6 competencies that relate the most with authenticity. The number one competency is self-actualization. What we mean by self-actualization, you probably remember learning about self-actualization from Abraham Maslow, and it was the top of his pyramid model. And really, self-actualization is about whether we, in fact, are involved in activities which have meaning and a sense of purpose for us, and bring us a level of fulfillment. And that is critical and important. In fact, what you see if you take a quick glance at this model, self-actualization is the number one EQ competency related with every single dimension of transformational leadership. So this is interesting. I think it's fascinating. And really, if someone is not in the right job, they are not fully, exercising their passion, feeling like they're really getting to use their gifts and talents and stretching and growing and striving to be better, then they will simply be a less effective leader. And you've probably experienced in your careers people who may, for whatever reason, not be in the right job, are not motivated, they're dealing with other issues, they're just not fully present and not fully engaged. And of course, they are less effective leaders. So we need to ensure that we pay attention to that self-actualization piece. And then following self-actualization is reality testing. So that's interesting. And again, as I mentioned, we're going to look at each one of these in turn. So we're going to start with self-actualization. We'll look at reality testing, self-regard, emotional self-awareness, social responsibility, and independence. Okay, so let's start by taking a look at oh, just before we do that, I just wanted to share with you one tool that the EITC team has created. And then, of course, we've got Sherwin Arnott's wonderful artistic touch to create a, it's a little booklet, and it allows you to transfer your EQ scores into these various 4 areas in a radar diagram type graphic to really see how your EQ is affecting authenticity, how it's affecting your ability to be involved in coaching, how we interact with others, how we share our insights, our what we see from our perspective as leaders in organizations, and finally, how we support and encourage innovation. I just wanted to share that with you. And now on to self-actualization, which, as you saw, is the most important piece in our model. I'm just gonna close that down so I can see better. So this is an actual piece from a leadership report. And you know it's a leadership report because you can see the little gold bar. The little gold bar, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the leadership report, actually is the range of scores of the top 50% of the study that was done using high-performing leaders. So their lowest score was higher than this individual's score on self-actualization. The mean for EQ, using the emotional quotient inventory, the EQI is 100. And so you see this person scores at 114, which is a very healthy score and a very good score. However, it falls short of where some really effective leaders, the top half of a group of really effective leaders score. So it's not enough. It actually bears paying attention to and looking at and looking into improving. So we really like using this report in our coaching work with leaders. It's very compelling to want to improve, because while this is a very healthy score for the general population, it's not quite where we would like to see it for effective leadership. So let's take a look at some of the things that are implied by just this first paragraph. There's actually a whole page on this with a lot of other information and a lot of details and suggestions for improvement, etc. But in order to, again, connect self-actualization with authenticity, we need to do some thinking. So self-actualization, so what your score means, self-actualization is strongly related to overall work success and performance. It can be summed up in 3 words: pursuit of meaning. And while it may sound philosophical, as a leader, it means finding purpose and enjoyment in your role and performing to your fullest potential. So this idea of potential and meaning is really an important thing. And of course, when people are not performing at their fullest potential, they've backed off. They're not fully engaged, and it's really harder to relate to those people, and it's harder to have full confidence in those people. So there's a bit of the relationship with effective leadership. This is from a sample report. So it says, Ms. Sample, your result suggests that you find deep meaning in your work and set challenging goals for yourself. And that's a good thing. And expect the same level of engagement from others. In addition to the passion and drive that you bring, your result also means that you feel as though you're exactly where you need to be, promote the growth and achievement of other employees, organizational goals are surpassed, high levels of performance are achieved. While you scored well above average on self-actualization, you could benefit from strengthening these skills and reaching the leadership bar. So there again is that suggestion that yes, it appears that you're doing well here. However, you could perhaps improve for even greater effectiveness as a leader. And again, the connection with authenticity. If this is who we actually are, then people know that. And if authenticity is about being honest, it's about being real, it's about being genuine, and that is who, and your involvement in self-actualization is really evident to others, and that's who you really are, and you're not just faking it, or you're not just pretending that you're self-actualized. Then others know that and connect with that and relate with that, so self-actualization, again, if you're not in a place where you can demonstrate your full passion, and so we've got a great question that I just noticed, and so I'll take it now. So thank you, John. It says, can self-actualization be nurtured or by nature? Can it be learned, or is it in your genes? And that's a great question. And of course, we think that it can be learned. And really, it is about many things. One of which is determining, what has meaning and purpose for you. And we do that by taking people through a simple values exercise, and for people to understand their core values. What is it that they really value the most, and are they involved in aligning with those values? And when we're aligned with our values, it's a beautiful thing, and it's a part of the exercise of becoming more self-actualized is getting more and more involved in those wonderful values of ours. So thanks for the question, John. The next one is reality testing. Reality testing is being able to see things as they really are. And this fits with authenticity. Authenticity is being who you really are, and it is being honest, and it is being genuine. And so reality testing is a key contributor to how you make decisions as a leader. Whether your approach is seen as grounded, objective, in touch with the work environment, or disconnected and biased. This person is, her name is Ms. Sample. Your result on the subscale suggests that you have the ability to remain objective, stay tuned into what is happening around you, and provide clear, realistic direction to your team. And by keeping your personal biases at bay, you likely make trusted and sensible decisions that organizational members can buy into. And of course, the idea is for this to be the way that we are. Reality testing is based on this idea that our perception is our reality. However, our perception, we don't know if our perception is shared by others. That is, that it fits with a common or more agreed upon reality unless we test it. So we've got to check it out with others. I've got to talk to people. We've got to share our perceptions, and again, when we share our perceptions, we are sharing our authenticity. And so you can see the contribution that reality testing makes to authenticity, and why it might be the second factor to correlate as the second strongest correlation. So reality testing is a nice fit with authenticity. We don't want people to sugarcoat things, to candy coat things. We don't want them to say that things are better than they are. We don't want people to say that they're worse than they are. We want people to be able, to the best of their ability, to say how they are, and that's reality testing. And again, that really nice fit with authenticity. All right, so got a question from Zena from Montreal. Nice to have you with us, Zena. I would have to believe that self-actualization related to self-esteem in relation to Maslow's higher order needs. In regards to learning, we enhance our self-esteem through self-awareness, values, meaning, purpose. Absolutely, Zena. Total agreement with you, and nice comment. Absolutely. All right, so let's move on to self-regard is there. And so you talk about self-esteem, Zena. Self-regard is not a dissimilar concept. How do we regard ourselves? How do we respect ourselves? Do we have confidence in our abilities? Are we able to respect and accept ourselves for who we really are? Again, right in here, leaders with self-regard respect themselves and accept both personal strengths and limitations while remaining satisfied and self-secure. So this is, again, there's an element of honesty here. So when we have a healthy self-regard, we're able to honestly look at ourselves and honestly accept ourselves for who we are, and be okay with who we are, and comfortable with who we are. Comfortable in our own skin is one. If there's a key performance indicator for self-regard, it's someone who's relaxed and comfortable and just being. Here's the comment, is that your self-regard is stronger than most people's at 113. It's almost one standard deviation. The standard deviation for EQI scores is 15. So a score of 13 points higher than the mean is very high, and suggesting a very healthy score. Now, as we discuss in our certification course, those of you who have taken the certification course, you know that we don't simply take the idea that higher is better. Higher scores are not always better. In fact, you can have someone who has a high score in self-regard who's a bit arrogant and feels separate and apart from others, and of course that's not good. But when it's healthy, you're likely to be seen as self-confident, who understands both personal strengths and weaknesses. It's important to ground your self-assuredness by using your reality testing skills and by continually seeking feedback. So again, part of reality testing is seeking feedback, getting others' perspectives and others' perceptions, and comparing them with your own. So here are some things that a person with this level of self-regard might do. Exercise your considerable influence on key strategic decisions. Demonstrate courage to stick by your convictions, even in the face of dissenting viewpoints. Use a leadership approach that leverages your strengths and delegates tasks in your weaker areas. Again, self-regard and authenticity, there's a nice connection because there is this idea of honesty about saying, you know what, this is who I am, and I'm okay with that. Being okay with who you are. And it's so interesting. We encourage leaders to share and more of themselves and bring more of themselves into the work that they do. And of course, it's not everything. It's not all details. It's not like we have to share everything. But it is what is the truth of who you are? What is your essence? And do you bring that essence to work? Do you bring that truth of who you really are into the workplace? The next one is emotional self-awareness, and this is the one that most of you voted as number one in relation to authenticity, and I can see why. That of course, if we're going to be truly authentic, we would think that it would be important to really know and understand who we are, know and understand our emotions. This idea that we know and understand our emotions means that we can leverage the power of that emotional information and all that can bring to us and give to us. Here the little interpretive text says, if you have a solid understanding of what brings about your emotions, it's much easier to regulate your behavior and control the impact your emotions have on employees in the organization. Ms. Sample, your result indicates that more than most people, you are conscious of your emotions and the impact they have on performance. You likely lead with composure and a full understanding of your impact on others. It is likely that you can choose a course of action based on a gut feeling in time-constrained situations. Generate respect, admiration, and honesty from employees because you're viewed as highly self-aware. Generally take time to contemplate instead of acting rashly, thereby considering your emotional response and those of others. You scored well above average on emotional self-awareness and fall within the leadership gold bar. This is a very favorable interpretation, and I hope that it's also suggesting to you the connection with authenticity, that people who have a good understanding of their own emotions are calmer. They're not ruled by their emotions. They're not prone to losing it. And they know the kinds of things and types of situations where they may lose it, and so they're prepared for those, generally speaking, and can manage themselves well. So again, emotional self-awareness is one of those competencies that contribute to authenticity, and we can see how that is, because it is about knowing and understanding the self, which includes, of course, in a huge way, the emotions. Let's talk about social responsibility here for a moment. So here in social responsibility, we're talking about giving back and being helpful to others and contributing to the well-being and the welfare of others. So this is part of and I guess this relates to this idea of authenticity as being about what's right. And again, this, that blog post, the authenticity conundrum, about whether you can be an authentic jerk and still be an effective leader, and the answer is no. And the answer is no because of a fundamental idea, which is which relates to something, and I hope you'll forgive me for a moment by going into something that's a little bit out there, but it's about good versus evil. That good ultimately wins. Evil ultimately undoes itself. And what we want and what we need is we want to be intelligent about our behavior, intelligent about emotions, and emotional intelligence is not about using what we've gained to dominate others, to manipulate others, that's not intelligent, because ultimately that undoes us. That is that is something that limits our behavior, and it's not intelligent. Intelligent behavior is what helps us reach our ultimate goal, and evil never does. And so when we are moral, when we're involved in what is right, there's the morality piece of authenticity. When we're involved in social responsibility, that is, we're giving to others, we're contributing to others, we're supporting others. That is not only good for others, but it's good for us. It's good for everyone. And we have to have leaders understand this idea of social responsibility as it relates to authenticity, and we have to encourage people to act in a moral and responsible manner. To act otherwise undermines trust, undermines relationships. It undoes and damages relationships. Leadership is about deepening and strengthening relationships and connection with others. And the only reason we're talking about leadership in this way today is because of the evolution of leadership from, as you all know, and we talked about this in our last webinar, which you can always go back to and take a look at, looking at performance, this idea that we are moving from a dominance model, which is characterized by more of an autocratic command and control type leadership. We are evolving towards a collaborative, participative, involving type of leadership, which is all about communication and relationships, which is why we need to look at emotional intelligence skills as the foundation or as the basis for that. And so this is really why all of this is so critical and important for us to all piece all these pieces together, and first of all ask what they mean for us personally, and then ask for what they mean for others around us, the others whose performance we're accountable for, the others who we want to impact. Okay, so social responsibility, again, just to read a few words from the interpretive text here for you. Social responsibility calls for leaders to act in a moral and responsible manner, promote the greater good, and be a strong voice in their teams, organizations, and communities. Now, some people might argue that, well, what if your company is all about making money? Then is that the best way to go? And you might decide that in fact it's not the best way to go, because you have different goals. Then you want to ask about how those goals actually fit with something like self-actualization. And interestingly, when making money is what has meaning and purpose for you, at one point in your career, at another point it doesn't. It's kind of the basis of the classic midlife crisis, where people wake up one morning finding that what they thought had meaning and purpose for them no longer does, in which case then we have to rethink things. We have to relook at what our goals and objectives actually are, and look to something like social responsibility. So your results suggest you're usually seen as a highly socially responsible leader, taking most, if not all, opportunities to help your team and the organization. Your concern for others, whether at work or in the community, is demonstrated through the selfless contributions you make. Based on your results, you consistently demonstrate your social conscience and are compelled to coach those who you lead, because you're concerned about their development. You're seen as a good Samaritan who helps others without expecting anything in return. And you gain fulfillment from a variety of sources, including activities outside of work. So again, why would social responsibility be connected and contribute to authenticity? Well, there absolutely is a connection there in this idea of morality, and promoting the greater good. And it is the kind of that reason for morality being in relation with authenticity in the first place. So it's not just any authenticity we're talking about here. It actually is what is authentically good. Let's take a look at independence here for a moment. Okay, so I see another comment. I'll just take a quick look at that comment. Executives, teachers, politicians, social responsibility, goal being collaboration and transformational leadership. Absolutely, absolutely. In whatever whatever role you have, whatever area you're operating in. And so those are our 6 competencies. Yeah, let's open it up to questions. So what questions do you have for me? Let's have a bit of a discussion to the extent that we can have. We've got our a couple of different ways to answer to put questions in here. I'm going to open up the question box over here, and so all right. So I'll just take them in order. We've got, oh, first day of Stampede, woot woot. Yes, absolutely, go Stampede. That's awesome, Carlene, thank you for that. Jeanette says, this is a hard competency to discuss with some leaders who are very competitive, feel that they need to push hard to be successful. How do you get people to consider giving it up for the common good? Great question, Jeanette. And I guess really what we have to do is we have to show how this style of leadership that we're talking about affects the bottom line. And so we have to look at, and we have to talk about, oh, thank you, Sharon. I did miss independence. You're absolutely right. We're going to go back and take a look at independence. However, you know, this idea that that people feel competitive, by showing them that organizations that value authenticity and that value collaboration and participative leadership are actually more competitive is a great way to go. So showing them how those hard metrics, things like organizational effectiveness issues such as attractiveness. How attractive is an organization to top talent? This is something that's critical and important. And if organizations are that their internal culture is very competitive and cutthroat, then people are not necessarily lining up to work there when there are alternatives for them. Another organizational effectiveness issue is retention. How do you keep those good people? Employee engagement. What are employee engagement scores like? And how can we improve employee engagement scores? How can we get people to feel better about work? Well, have more people involved in self-actualization, have more people have more authentic leaders who are able to develop great relationships and have clear communication with others, and then you address those issues. So ultimately, Jeanette, to make a very long answer, and I could probably talk about this for hours, short, it's about talking about what people really value, and making the connection between contemporary leadership, we call it 21st century leadership, leadership that is characterized by a partnership paradigm, and showing them how that actually is better than the alternative. Okay, let's quickly go back and take a look at independence, and then we'll. Yeah, there's independence right there. Okay, so in terms of independence, this is being free from emotional dependency. And of course, it makes a lot of sense that someone who is independent is able to think, feel, work on their own. They're willing and capable of taking input and having people be involved in decision making. However, ultimately, they're able to take that decision on their own. And you may remember, and I refer to this frequently, this model that Stephen Covey had in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which had independence at the bottom and interdependence at the top. What he was really suggesting was that once we know what we bring into the relationship, what we bring to the table, then we can have a better level of relationship, a better, more effective connection with each other. And so that's the importance of independence to authenticity, is that we are authentically who we are all on our own, without depending on others for any part of that, and that's going to help us out. So thank you, Sharon, for reminding me that I missed independence, and we'll now go back and take a look at what other questions we have here. And I see a lot, so this could be really great. And let's just, collaboration is awesome. However, it should not be confused with managing by consensus. What are your thoughts on this? Absolutely, Erna. You know, that you know, sometimes consensus is not always the way to go, and collaboration is. And of course, whenever I talk about autocratic or command and control leadership, there's a time for that. However, and the time for that is when you need to make an expedient decision, when you need to address an emergency, when you need to, you know, if you're on the battlefield, you probably need command and control leadership. But in most organizations, in every day, in terms of how people relate to each other, what builds relationships is collaboration, dialogue, and conversation, and of course. So absolutely, Erna. Some people can think that every decision must be made by consensus, and we have to have a committee and we have to discuss it, and of course that takes time. So so effective leadership is knowing, you know, when is the time to take the time for dialogue and when is the time to simply make a decision and move on. Another question. How much is the EQI test? It's actually not a test, thanks, Paige. It's an inventory. It's the EQ inventory, the emotional quotient inventory. It's an assessment tool which helps individuals understand more about their own emotional intelligence. And in terms of the price depends on who you are. There is a wholesale price and there is a retail price, of course, and I'm happy to discuss those afterwards and certainly let you know. And is there company pricing for large groups? Absolutely, there is. There are volume discounts, and so and we at our company, we tell organizations or even individuals like yourself, you can have us come and do it for you, or you can come get the expertise from one of our courses, our certification course, and bring it back into your own organization. So lots of variables involved in pricing, and happy to have that conversation with you offline. Joan, how does one move into positivity when peers seem to focus mostly on the negatives? Great question, Joan, and it's great to have you join us today. Absolutely, how does one move into positivity? Actually, this has more to do with the competency of optimism. And of course, Martin Seligman wrote his wonderful book called Learned Optimism, where he talks about whether it is possible for someone to move from negativity into positivity. And he breaks it down. He talks about all of the factors involved, and so it's absolutely possible. But I guess, you know, to really answer your question, Joan, the question is, and it's not dissimilar to the question that Jeanette asked above. It is, does that individual want to change? So, you know, does that competitive person want to learn how they can be even more competitive, which is not about holding your cards close to your chest, but being more operating in a more transparent level. And again, this person who's negative and to move them into positive, they have to want to. So they have to understand for themselves, what is the benefit to me of being different and going in a different way. And so that's what is necessary and required in order to make that happen. So it is possible, but someone has to want to do it. All right, so another question from Erna, and she says, I've read that EQ is almost impossible to improve. Well, I wonder where you've read that, Erna. That's a very interesting idea, because it is absolutely possible to improve. There are models, and again, you know, you talk about EQ, which is what was coined by people who were creating models of learned skills. However, there's also the idea of EI, which is emotional intelligence, and there are models of emotional intelligence which are more about what is genetically predetermined. In fact, the guys who coined the term, Mayer and Salovey, their model is largely about unchangeable abilities of the brain to process emotions and emotional information. So maybe that's what you're referring to. But there is this great debate going on, and people are, talking about whether you can improve EQ or EI or not. So that's probably where that comes from. But then you go on to say it's been suggested that one should have a trusted coworker friend who can be authentic with you and provide real feedback. Problem with that is feedback typically comes after the fact thoughts. So yeah, your question is multifaceted, Erna, and it has been suggested that one should have a trusted coworker or friend. Yes, one should always. That's a wonderful thing. But are they the one to actually help you improve? I don't know. That depends on the nature of that relationship. So best is to get a neutral third party, a coach, if you really want to improve your own EQ, is to work one-to-one with a coach who really can be authentic with you because they have no reason to be anything else. And of course provide real feedback, and this idea that it comes after, absolutely, feedback typically comes after the fact, but it's knowing about how to give feedback and how to help people to improve. And people often, if it's not on the list, sometimes Gary Vaynerchuk says, well, Gary Vaynerchuk is not exactly an emotional intelligence specialist. He so again, if you're wanting to improve, you absolutely can. Can you? How much can you move the dial? How badly do you want to change? I guess it is another question. All right, so good advice about the coach. You're welcome. And yeah, let's see, what else? What else? What else? What else? Okay. When leaders lack authenticity, what are the symptoms? Great question. Thank you for that. And of course, when leaders lack authenticity, you know it, and there's a lack of trust. One of the biggest symptoms is lack of trust. When people are more are authentic with us, we know it. And when they really reveal of themselves to us, we get to know them. And Amy Cuddy, the woman who does this wonderful TED talk on power, and power poses. I don't know if you remember these. She's got her victory pose and her Wonder Woman pose and these different things. She wrote a book, and one of the things that she says is that we don't trust what we don't know. And so before people can really trust us, they have to know us. And again, it's what they know about us authentically, not what we want them to know about us or want them to think about us. We can want people to think certain things about us, but if it's not authentic, then it's not going to last. And people will quickly see through any kind of attempts for us to be fake or to be something that we're not. So again, this idea of who we choose to show up as should be pretty close to who we authentically are. And I think, for a lot of us, as we get older, we get more comfortable with who we are, and it's easier to be authentic than when we're young, and maybe, we feel like we have to be a certain way to achieve certain goals. So there's that. And can someone's authenticity score be too high? That's an interesting question, and I guess the answer is yes. And so it would be, I guess, what the question means is that, if we look at the 6 EQ competencies that are correlated with authenticity on the EQI, can scores in those areas be too high? And as I mentioned, someone who scores too high on self-actualization, that can sometimes mean someone who is fairly egocentric and really, more concerned about their own growth and development and their own everything than other things. So there's that issue, and and then if we look at self-regard, that's someone who's arrogant. And if we look at emotional self-awareness, that's someone who's too focused on their own emotions, and maybe a little too introspective. And and then if we look at independence, someone who is too independent, a downside of that is that they do perhaps possibly isolate themselves somewhat, and aren't necessarily connected with others. So I would comment more on the potential downside of high scores in each of the EQ competencies than actually someone scoring too high on authenticity. Can you be too authentic? I don't know. Probably, maybe not. Maybe you can't be. Maybe you can just be who you are. Maybe it's just knowing more about who you are and how you are in your genuineness and in your authenticity. Oversharing, lack of boundaries, evidence of too much authenticity. No, I think they're evidence of other things. I think oversharing is a lack of impulse control, that people feel like they really need to that they really need to tell you everything about what's going on with them. And I think lack of boundaries is well, I would have to know more about what that exactly means, but I think it means not really being able to be assertive in certain situations, and not say that's not okay with me, or that's unacceptable. So I'm going to go back to another comment, and the comment is, some people may confuse authentic with being blunt and rude. Absolutely, this can happen. And how does one coach a person who comes off as uncaring of people's feelings? Again, it's about making sure that people understand the impact, not their intention. While their intention may be to give honest feedback to someone, their impact is that they were perceived as being mean and hurtful, and people often say, well, I was just being honest, when in fact they were hurtful, or they were mean, or they were rude. And that is really related to a lack of empathy. So how do you coach a person who comes off as uncaring of other people's feelings? You show them the personal cost to them of that, the damaged relationships, the decreased productivity, the increased turnover, the lack of employee engagement, whatever is important to that person. Because as I can't remember who said it first, but Anthony Robbins sure says it over and over again. We are people who are attracted to feeling good, and we're repelled by feeling pain. So we want pleasure, we avoid pain. So if you can help people to understand how how improving in this area can help them to have more pleasure and less pain, then that's the way to go. Enjoyed being involved in your webinar. Openness, willingness to share, authenticity is so helpful. Thank you. You are so welcome. And thanks for being here. Some leaders ooze stress to the detriment of their teams. What if they're authentically stressed? Yeah, good question. Well, what we encourage in that situation is to be honest about that. When someone comes in and says, "Wow, I'm really nervous," I always appreciate that much more than seeing the nervousness and seeing the sweat or the shakiness, and them trying to pretend they're otherwise. That is far, far worse. I have to sign off now. Okay, great. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Hope to see you soon. Again, we're coming up to the top of the hour. We've got 2 minutes left. We'll sign off right at 10. However, in our last couple of minutes, yeah, I think that it's much more important to be authentic. People appreciate that so much more. To say, you know what, I'm really stressed out. That requires emotional self-awareness, and it requires an element of self-understanding, and also the ability to express your emotions. So many of our other EQ competencies are tied in here: stress tolerance, and many other things. Are tied into that. But to be authentic is to say, you know what, I'm really nervous. You know what? I'm really upset right now. You know what? I'm really worried about the direction that we're going in. All of these things are being authentic, and it is much more appreciated. Again, we don't trust what we don't know. And so how do we get to know you? How do you let other people get to know you? Then by being authentic, saying what's actually going on, saying what is, saying your truth. This is what's going to be critical and important for each one of us moving forward. And I just want to take the last minute to look at our last slide. So thank you all so much for being here. Quickly sum up. Authenticity is desirable. It's attractive. It's trustworthy.
It's 10 o'clock.
And we're just run over just by a minute. It's essential for connection. There are many EQ competencies that correlate with authenticity, so we need to zero in and focus on each one of those. Again, one of the most effective models for leadership development is the MHS model of emotional intelligence. And finally, we're going to send you a follow-up email, which we hope that that you all look for. And it's going to tell you about when the next certification course options are, when the next Mastering EI Competencies Day is, when the next 3-day Heart and Science of Leadership is, and a little bit more about how to take the EQI and or the EQ 360. And again, there'll be a $100 off coupon for any one of those services and sessions. Thanks everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. We're so thankful that you stopped by and grateful for your participation. And be sure to